Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network. Today is January the 12th, 2017, and we're on the iHeartRadio network, the #1 network in the United States. And also Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and his good old boys down south. And we always want to say thank you so much in Latin America. So bienvenidos. We appreciate you listening to Charlton and Big C Sports, and of course across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. And also I want to say you good old boys from Canada, love you so much, Canada. So thank you for following Charlton and Big C Sports. Well, Big C, there's no one I love more than the land of the free and the home of the brave. And even if Putin is more trusted than our CIA, I still appreciate you good old boys down south. How's it going for you good old boys, Big C?
Well, Charlton, I guess the reason why he's trusted so much is that he has so much oil.
Yeah.
What he can do for the former CEO of ExxonMobil is this cabinet position that he wants. He can make some people very wealthy, releasing some of that oil reserve, over in Russia since Obama has put so many sanctions on the stuff that we have here in the U.S.
Yeah, that's funny. I was listening to these, and we love talking about the great President-elect Donald Trump because he is one of the biggest sports fanatics out there. And for all the radio programs that say, well, how do you mix sports with politics? Well, one of our biggest leaders now for the United States government is going to be President-elect Donald Trump. And he's on sports franchises. You can't get any bigger than the president on his sports teams, Big C. And so I also want to say that this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive one, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, I think even Mother Nature has caught on to you because we keep saying how you drive the Escalade through the swamps like the good old boys back in the day. And now because there's so much rain in California, there's a lot of Escalades being driven around in the swamps, Big C. Your thoughts, Big C? Because we have all this rain now, Big C, I think you may also be caught up in a little bit of swamp yourself. But again, I was telling...
We're nationwide, we're universe-wide. Everybody's been hearing about Big C's Escalade, and I guess people might want to be pulled over and try to get an autograph or something if people think that Big C running around in that dirty Escalade. Mine is unique. It is one of a kind. It's like a show. It's truthful. It's a front. We don't hide anything, just like I don't hide the mud. I'm not worried about the car wash.
You're putting car washes out of business. But Big C, as we get on to, I know we have an abbreviated show today because you're traveling throughout the East Coast. I just want to bring something up. On the West Coast, there's so much. We just had some great college football with Clemson and Alabama. And from what I understand, all of the paychecks are being cashed for the people who got paid to go to that game, Big C. So Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney, they can probably buy their wives, a new diamond ring, Big C, with the money they just got for this free labor they hand out. But I also want to say that the San Diego Chargers, Dan Fouts was on ESPN this morning, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever in the NFL. And he's really feeling, very sad about the fact that the Chargers and that community is starting to divorce, Big C, and they're going to L.A. where everybody gets divorced after 7 years. Big C, your thoughts on the move?
Well, Charlton, this is one of those moves that you hate to see in the NFL, and we talk so much about franchise and moving. And it's purely about economics, but what about the economics that you leave behind? I think that's a forgotten entity in America, in big business, is that all the little people you leave behind. Charlton, it's easy for millionaires to move.
Yeah.
Because they can always find real estate. But when you think about the people who relied on that team for their livelihood, think about the grounds crew. That grounds crew is not going to be leaving there. Going to Los Angeles with that team, Charlton, they're not going to be needed because there's already a grounds crew at that small stadium, which only seats 30,000 people that they're talking about going to. When you think about other staff, security staff that will work the game, venue staff, Charlton, all of those people are already in place. So when you think about those people that were left behind, I wonder if Donald Trump is going to call the Spanos family and tell them that they can't move, that they can't leave San Diego, otherwise he's going to put sanctions on them.
Well,
because he's tried dealing with the NFL before. They all laughed at him because he was a joke.
Yeah. Well, Big C, I think, there's so much talk about loyalty, and everyone should be loyalty, especially if they tell it to the young college kids, or maybe they're just not business savvy enough to say, why am I giving you $1 million and I get a handshake and a hat? And the Spanos, they started, I believe, in Stockton, California, and the great.
Still resides there, Charlton. The patriarch, Alex Spanos,
yeah,
is there in Stockton, California, even though he's been in less than perfect health the past couple of years, and his son has taken more of the control of the team.
Yeah.
That's always the scenario. When we get a kid that comes in and takes control of the team, just like in Oakland with Mark Davis,
yeah,
who is now talking about taking the Raiders to Las Vegas, where his dad did everything that he could to keep him in California, but everybody's always looking for that pretty girlfriend that they think on the other side that says is better.
Yeah.
You can only go someplace, John,
yeah,
and not produce. The Chargers have not been, a dominant team in the AFC West for some time, and so that cost you fanfare-wise. We saw what happened to the Los Angeles Rams when they went back. That honeymoon was over in 4 weeks, Charlton.
Yeah.
In 4 weeks, everyone said, hey, I can go back to the beach and get the highlights because there's only going to be 1 or 2 highlights after the game.
In fact, if you ever go to Venice Beach, that's also more entertaining than some NFL football games if you ever been to California. They call it Muscle Beach, Big C. But the thing that you just brought up, the Chargers are leaving a 70,000-seat stadium down at Qualcomm or whatever they call it now. It's hosted several Super Bowls. And in fact, when you think about it, they're going from 70,000 to 30,000. So they're getting about 40,000 seats to go watch NFL football. Now, if the stadium's good enough to host the NFL championship, the Super Bowl, you would think it would be good enough to host, NFL football. But I know they want more press boxes. They just want a new shiny car, Big C. But going to the StubHub Center, which is where California plays their high school championship games, Big C, and also I think the LA Galaxy plays there. It's in Carson, California, and there's no amenities around there that are really more appealing than what you have in San Diego. I think they're taking it from the penthouse to the outhouse in a sense, if that makes any sense, Big C.
Well, Charlton, you think about how many dollars now you have to split in Los Angeles to see a football game. You have UCLA.
Yeah.
You have USC.
Yeah.
You have the Rams that have come back in, Charlton. Now you got the Chargers. You're having 4 major sporting entities.
The Dodgers?
Well, no, we're just talking about football.
Oh, football, yeah.
We're not talking about the Lakers and the Clippers and
Yeah.
the Kings and the Anaheim Ducks, the Dodgers, the Angels. Throw those out of the equation, Charlton. Let's look at football alone, okay?
Yeah.
On any given weekend, you can have 4 football games in Los Angeles in a weekend. Who's going to attend what? I don't give it. It doesn't make any difference. You got 22 million people living there, Charlton.
Yeah.
There's only so many people that are going to buy football tickets. And when you have 4 teams, and when you look at the Rose Bowl and the Coliseum that are being utilized right now for 3 of those teams, and each one of those venues hold in excess of 90,000 seats, Charlton.
Yeah.
You're not going to get 90,000 fans at any game in Los Angeles anymore. USC is not playing with Pete Carroll. Okay?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
And that's funny that you bring it up, Big C, because LA is the land of opportunity. And we talk about it all the time, and how the college football, especially in the South, where you get 100,000 fans, or you're not really making a statement. You don't have a 100,000 seat stadium. And most of your stadiums in the SEC, especially for the teams that win, 100,000 fans is just commonplace, Big C. It's like having a 3-bedroom home or a 4-bedroom home. On your case, where you guys have like these 12-bedroom houses, I don't know who's sleeping in all those rooms, Big C. But at the same time, though, when you think about it, it's just telling the fans. I mean, it's like saying F you to the fans, the people that have loved this organization. And you talked about I'm just going to sound a little bit flippant here, but the people behind the scenes, the people that do the concessions, the people that make money when they have 70,000 fans coming into an arena, and they can sell concessions on the outside of that stadium. I heard the owner say it's not that hard to drive from San Diego to LA. If you have ever driven in LA traffic, it's hard to drive 20 miles, let alone 100 miles on game day. I just think they're telling the fans, we don't care about you. And they think the fans in LA are so stupid that they're going to take a watered-down product in San Diego that left the community that loved them just so they can see football at StubHub Center. It just doesn't make any sense, Big C. Now, I think Goodell is dropping the ball. And I say that because if you don't put a stop to this, you're going to have teams leaving cities every 5 years, and that could damage the reputation of the NFL, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it should be done with the city of Cleveland did when the Browns were trying sneak out in the middle of the night with Art Modell.
Yeah.
The city of Cleveland demanded that, yes, and they knew the Browns were going to leave, but they demanded that the name of the team belonged to the city. And they filed suit, and it did. A judge upheld that. The Browns, the name belonged to the city of Cleveland. So when the Browns left, the original Browns left Cleveland, that's how the Baltimore Ravens were formed, Charlton. The Baltimore Ravens were formed through that. But when you think about when the Colts left Baltimore, they took the name along with them. Think of it, they had to leave that name behind. What you do, Charlton, is you take away all the history of the organization.
Yeah.
When you sit back and you look, Jim Brown is still intact as a Cleveland Brown.
Yeah.
Ernie Davis was still drafted by the Cleveland Browns, Charlton. When you think about Len Dawson, okay, the quarterback who led the Kansas City Chiefs to Super Bowl IV, the victory,
yeah,
he was drafted by the Cleveland Browns. Otto Graham, who won 6 NFL championships, Charlton, is still a Cleveland Brown. Those records are still intact.
Yeah.
That heritage, even though the organization is not what it once was, but when you go back and you look at those players who were there and cut their teeth on that organization, Charlton, what if the Chicago Bears moved from Chicago and went somewhere else and became whatever Bears?
You know what, Big C, just saying that, you would think that could never happen, but it's already happening, Big C. It's just happening slowly, and that's a shame because you're right.
Look at this, Charlton.
Yeah.
Who plays in Arizona out in the desert? What team is that?
Yeah, the Cardinals, Phoenix Cardinals now.
Okay.
Arizona Cardinals.
They were the St. Louis Cardinals, okay?
Yeah.
But before they were the St. Louis Cardinals, Charlton, they were the Chicago Cardinals.
Yeah.
So this is their third move. So think about what they left behind in Chicago. They reestablished in St. Louis. All of a sudden, they were gone. Now St. Louis is without a team after the Rams deserted them. This is the second professional football team that has deserted St. Louis. Why? You have to ask why. But the NFL, if Roger Goodell wants the man up, as they say, cowboy up.
Yeah.
Okay, show some cojones. Tell a team if you leave, the name cannot leave. You can take your organization. You can take your basketball and go down the street. But you can't take the name of the court with you, okay?
Yeah.
The charges remain and stay assembled in San Diego with or without a team.
Well, see, and I think what Dan Fouts was talking about this morning, how it's hurtful to a lot of people because when you have money, it doesn't mean that you should be able to get away with everything. And I understand the county of San Diego, they were saying that they did not want to vote to have a new stadium built that's going to cost in excess of $1 billion, Big C. And the reason I'm kind of behind the fan base now, and because it's a touchy feeling, emotional thing. But if the fan base was going to give $1 billion to a guy that's going to leave you if you don't, that's being held to ransom, Big C. If you think that you can go to L.A., especially the city of Carson, and after 1 or 2 weeks going to have people want to come to see your product, that you left a city where you were the biggest fish in the pond. You were a big fish in a small pond. Now you're a small fish in a big pond. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think Dan Fouts was right. And you think about the Charlie Joyner and just some of these great players that have played there in San Diego, Big C.
Charlie Joyner, Charles.
Yeah.
Lance Allwood, Dick Post. These great players of the past, Louis Kelcher, players who built this organization over the years. Ron Mix, one of the first large offensive tackles in the NFL at 6'9". So when you go back and you think about the history of these players, Charles, who have been there, Kellen Winslow, probably still the greatest tight end.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care what these young guys get number-wise.
Yeah.
Kellen Winslow revolutionized that position. You got a Chuck Muncie and a James Brooks in the backfield along with Dan Fouts. One of the most electrifying, backfields of all time in the NFL.
Big C. How much moonshine did you have this morning? It's rolling off your head. I know you can't Google that fast, so you just got this. It's funny when you get rolling like that. You're like the California flood right now. You're just rolling, Big C. But you're right. So let me ask you this question. What team is next, Big C? We know the Raiders may or may not go to Las Vegas. You're not going to have 3 NFL teams in Los Angeles. I think San Diego's trying to beat the Raiders to the punch. What team is next outside of L.A.? Let's say outside of the West Coast, which is one of the greatest places to live. what team is next out there when they see Goodell is just sitting back watching all of this happen. They're screwing the taxpayers that help fund some of these stadiums, and they're just leaving. I just want to say before I get your answer on that, this segment is sponsored by the California Lottery. What can a buck do for you? Go down and take it, and maybe you can buy an NFL football stadium, Big C, if you buy a big enough ticket. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, Charles, I look at this. You say what team is next?
Yeah.
Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Jacksonville is next, Jonathan. You cannot fill that stadium. People think Raiders have a hard time filling the stadium.
Yeah.
Try Jacksonville, Jonathan. They have not won in over a decade down there, okay? And there's no end in sight. You know, you hire an old coach, you make him the vice president of the organization,
yeah,
who was the original coach of the team, Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin hires a guy who walked out of Buffalo with a losing record, knowing that he's going to emulate that same scenario in Jacksonville, so it makes it real easy for Tom Coughlin to fire the guy who takes over as the coach, which he wanted to be anyway.
Yeah.
So give Maroney a year and a half in Jacksonville, and Tom Coughlin will be the head coach. But they're going to be the next team to go, Charlton, because you're just not going to survive under that fan base not winning. Somebody will put together a stadium. You know, St. Louis is available.
Yeah.
You know, Jacksonville can leave and go to St. Louis then. And they would love Jacksonville because now they have a team in here, Charlton, and even San Diego. You know, you think about that. The San Diego Jaguars or the St. Louis Jaguars, they will be in one of those stadiums, Charlton. That's where they will go because you can't force them to stay behind if they can't fill up the stadium. You're going to go where it's more attractive and having a fan base that's already there that's hungry.
Yeah.
So they will be in Jacksonville within the next 2 to 5 years. If the state of the NFL stays like it is and there's no moratorium put on these moves by the league's office.
Big C, I want to ask you one more question. I just want to say, before you get on your plane, how much time you got to go before the plane takes off, Big C, if you can't tell me, right?
We got a few minutes. You know, when we can talk, you know, we always enjoy having these conversations, letting our fan base know what to really expect and look for out there. You're not going to get these honest conversations from Fox. You're not going to get them from ESPN. They're going to spend a lot of time talking about themselves, about when they played. I played. I didn't give a damn about what I played, y'all. But I don't even know what my championship was.
Yeah, that.
I'm like Robert.
That's funny. Okay, the Buffalo Bills, Big C. We're talking about what team could be next. Orchard Park, New York, is a great place to watch a football game in September. There's some talk about them going to Canada to play in Toronto, Big C. I know the CFL would probably fight that with every ounce of money they have, but you know the Toronto Raptors play up in Canada, and they're an NBA team. We did have Montreal play baseball up there before they went to Washington. We also had the Vancouver Grizzlies before they became the Memphis Grizzlies. Toronto is a beautiful city, one of the most gorgeous cities, period, in the world, Big C. Any talk, any significance? I mean, people might laugh at that because they think New York is everything, but Toronto is gorgeous. Now, any talk of Buffalo going to Toronto, is that still kind of in the background, Big C?
You got to look at it from this perspective, Jonathan. You know, a lot of the Buffalo season ticket holders are from Canada.
Yeah.
When you think about logistically, Toronto and Buffalo is about a 2-hour drive. You know, just like what Spanos was talking about with fans going from San Diego to LA. But I don't think that traffic up there is as bad as that Southern California traffic, Jonathan. They've relied a lot on those fans from Canada coming down, helping fill that stadium, Jonathan. But when you think about the NFL crossing that border, Jonathan,
yeah.
I don't think that they would cross that border that close to home. You know, there's also been talk about Mexico. There's also been talk about England. You know, Jacksonville more than England. You know, put a franchise in Mexico. Jonathan, the NFL is American product. It's going to stay in America. It's not going anywhere. That experiment of going outside the country, there's too many things you have to deal with logistically. Passports. Can players get in and out of certain countries? And when you think about some of these players on the NFL, they may not be able to travel.
Yeah.
You know, because of their past.
Well, Big
So
C.
they may not be able to get into another country.
Well, that's funny because there's a lot of things that are becoming more illegal, not just Colorado, if you know what I mean. They play in the Mile High State, Big Z, but there's a lot of guys that want to travel anyway, and whether they can get across, you know, other borders in the other countries is an issue. I just want to run down in a little segment here. I want to talk about some of the high school women's basketball team. For the high school sections, we have the number 1 team in the country. It's Paul VI out of Fairfax, Virginia. Number 2 is Clovis West out of Fresno, California. Number 3 is Riverdale out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Centennial out of Las Vegas. They have a lot of good programs in Las Vegas, football and basketball. and there's a Mohican out of Richmond, Virginia, St. John's out of Washington, D.C., and then we have Miami Country Day, number 7. Number 8 is Norcross out of Georgia. Number 9 is Grandview out of Aurora, Colorado. And number 10 is a Montpelier Catholic out of Lombardy, Hawaii, it looks like, Big C. I just want to say this segment is also sponsored by One Life America Life Insurance. We're the leaders in the country when it comes to final expense. Tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network, the number one network in the universe, and also Big C Sports, the number one sports show in the universe. Big C, I just want to get this point too. You brought it up earlier. We talked about college football. You talked about USC. You talked about UCLA. And then you have the Raiders thinking about going back there. The Rams are already there. Going to have San Diego now. There's not enough room in Los Angeles to get the support, the fan support. Even if you build $1 billion stadium, people in LA, they just don't have the apathy to sit down at a game for 4 hours. They'd rather go to the beach. There's so much more happening in entertainment capital. And just to touch on that, the great Jamie Foxx, we just talked about him recently as being one of the top actors in the world, period. He's also a great entertainer. And he's saying that the players have more fun when it comes to football and basketball and sports. Now, they may say, how do you mix sports and entertainment the way Big C Sports does? Here you have one of the best actors and entertainers and musicians in the world saying that the league should let the players have more fun. They're actually quoting Jamie Foxx, Big C. Your thoughts on how much influence Hollywood has in the acting community, Big C?
Well, Charlton, eventually they're going to have to cut the reins on the NFL and stop riding sheriff on every little incident that a player gets into. You know, we look at players today, Charlton, and we want to think that they're the players of 40 years ago. You know, mentality, mindset, socially, everything. They're not, Charlton. These players are now more highly intelligent than the players of those days.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about the education and what they've been exposed to, you know, they're more knowledgeable. And so they're going to be doing things. They're going to challenge you. You know, it's like all the backlash that players get when they do certain things. Charlton, players are of an economical level now that's equal to any CEO in the country.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at what they make, when you have players making $25-30 million a year playing a sport,
yeah,
you know, and they only work part-time when you realistically look at it.
Yeah.
Even part-time employees with the kind of money that they make. So, you know, and so there's a lot of people that don't understand, you know, they go back to that old-time mentality that you should be happy with what you've got. No, I deserve what I have. That's what an athlete says now. I'm not happy. I have worked hard to get this. Just like anybody in corporate America. Unless you've gotten someplace through nepotism, Charlton,
yeah,
you have earned every dollar that you have made in America. And there's many Americans,
yeah,
not athletes, but many Americans who have gone out and earned every dollar that they made, living the lifestyle that they can afford.
Yeah.
So you can't go out and say things about athletes that you used to, but these guys, Charlton, help teams make decisions.
Yeah, Big C. And
structure teams' futures.
Yeah. And I agree with that 100%. Also, I just want to acknowledge Jamie Foxx has a movie coming out Friday called Sleepless. You know, he's been in so many good movies that portrayed an athlete as an NFL football player, Big C. So congratulations to Jamie Foxx. And also his opinions being thought of as the NFL is also reaching out to Hollywood, because if they understand people who love sports, they also love acting. They love entertainment. It's all part of the entertainment industry. So, Big C, I want to ask you, there's been some chatter about some new league that's going to start up for guys that don't want to go to college and kind of another semi-pro football league. There comes a point when you can oversaturate anything if you have it too much available, Big C. Do you think a new league would make any sense? None of them could compete against the NFL, Big C. Your thoughts?
Charles, we've had the World Football League back in the 70s. We've had the USFL back in the 80s. The NFL has proven through collusion that they will not allow anybody else to function.
Yeah.
If you broadcast a game in another sports league, that's revenue lost by the NFL. That's how they look at it. So if you're partnering with the NFL, and I believe every network right now, Charlton, is partnering with the NFL.
Yeah.
We see the games on Fox. We see the games on CBS, Charlton. We see the games on NBC. Okay? We see the games on ESPN, which is technically ABC.
Yeah.
So that network is available to broadcast another league. And the NFL says, you broadcast their games, you don't broadcast our games.
Yeah.
That's basically what it's going to come down to. They played that game twice with two leagues. The XFL
USFL, yeah. 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 Well, in fact, Sacramento won one of those games. They actually played. I think they were called the Sacramento Gold Miners, and they won the championship in Montreal, Canada. Big C. That's back in the day. Oh, okay.
Sacramento was in the CFL. I'm talking about you. That's why I said it was before you were born.
Oh, okay.
It only existed for like a year and a half. There was 8 teams.
Yeah.
Then the USFL came along, Jonathan, and it lasted 2.5 years. But the NFL can put the pitch on you without saying it. They don't have to say anything to that particular league.
Yeah.
But they say something to their broadcast partners. Which product is worth more to you?
Okay, well, Big C.
And build our own network, which the NFL has the power.
Yeah.
To create their own broadcasting network. We see that with the NFL network. So if they pull the games from those other sources,
Yeah.
where does that leave them product-wise? We saw what happened over a decade ago when NBC was outdated for football, and CBS took it away from when Fox took it away from CBS.
Yeah.
And NBC was without a product. That was a network that suffered financially. Huge loss. Stock went way down, Charlie. So nobody right now is going to give up a dime of time to another league that tries to come in.
Well, Big C, that makes a lot of sense. In the last 5 minutes, I want to say this segment is also sponsored by One Life America Life Insurance. We're the leaders in the country when it comes to final expense. Also, we're looking to hire over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers. Tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. You can also follow us on Twitter at YesCharlton. And we're also offering athletic insurance, whether you're a professional team, a college team, or even your soccer leagues. Tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports to get your athletic and events insurance. Big C, in the last 5 minutes, I know we'll touch on the NFL more tomorrow, but I know you're traveling. Just want to get your thoughts on Seattle at Atlanta. We talked about the Dallas and Green Bay game. Seattle's going up to Atlanta. Seattle has not looked very good on the road this year. I know they're very, very good at home, but even at home, they lost a game to Arizona that didn't even make the playoffs. Atlanta under Matt Ryan, they're an up-and-down team, kind of a Jekyll and Hyde. But at home, this guy can really throw the football. We know the running games will always make a difference in these games. They don't have beast mode this time. Your thoughts on Seattle going into Atlanta, Big C? Your thoughts?
When you look at Atlanta, Charlton, they're 7-1 at home this year.
Yeah.
And they've led the NFL in scoring this season. So you're talking about a high-octane offense, a team that can move the ball up and down the field.
Yeah.
The difference that they had in their offense this year, Charlton, was their running game. They had 2 excellent running backs that have made a difference with Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
But, I really think when you get to the playoffs, Charlton, you get to this ego. You're the guy that's been hyped as a potential NFL MVP.
Yeah.
Which Matt Ryan will show up? Will the egotistical Matt Ryan show up that has allowed his team to flourish by being a team player this year, Charlton?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to be the MVP? Or will Matt Ryan come out that everybody says is the MVP and just try to throw the ball everywhere?
Yeah.
That's what Atlanta faces this week. Seattle, we know that Seattle can show up, Charlton, and play a defensive game against anybody. They have a tremendous defensive core, and they've proven that over time. They've been in a couple Super Bowls. They've been in the playoffs consistently. You look at Russell Wilson. What he's done in his young NFL career, Charlton, he's been a staple in the playoffs.
Yeah.
His team there. He has that leadership quality that's hard to find. People talk about, great quarterbacks. And Russell Wilson, like Mike Tomlin, is not considered a great quarterback like he's not considered a great coach.
Yeah.
Because all he does is win.
Yeah.
You got to be a loser in the NFL to be considered great.
Yeah.
Matt Ryan, in his time in Atlanta, they've won 1 playoff game since he's been the quarterback in Atlanta.
Wow.
1 playoff game, Charlton. I mean, Russell Wilson has already won a Super Bowl, so you know how many games you got to win.
Yeah.
Super Bowl, right?
That's funny.
So when you think about that, if you're judging these 2 quarterbacks on what they've done,
Yeah.
instead of media hype, Charlton, you got to like what Seattle can do.
Yeah.
Because they've been in this position. It doesn't scare them, Charlton, to go into a big game.
Yeah.
They went to Minnesota last year, Charlton. It was, what, minus 14?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And walked out of there with a victory. So they can play in any type of climate. And the last time these 2 teams played, Charlton, for a chance to go to the Super Bowl, and that's when San Francisco went and played the Ravens.
Yeah.
Atlanta had a comeback victory when, Matt Ryan hit Roddy White on about a 54-yard pass play that took them in field goal range.
Yeah.
And they kick the game-winning field goal. But Roddy White is not there, even though they have probably the best receiver in the NFL in Julio Jones, Charlton.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is one of those games that if Atlanta can't find a pass rush to contain Russell Wilson, this could be one of those games where Atlanta falls again, and then you really have to question, is Matt Ryan the MVP of the NFL?
Yeah. That's a good point, because you're paid to win, not just paid to throw the ball a lot, Big C. And then the final thought I'll get from you, I know you got to get on an airplane pretty soon. The final thought I want to get from you, Atlanta, you just talked about Atlanta. They're building a beautiful stadium right next door to the one they're playing in that was built in, I believe, in 1996, Big C. I think it opens next year. They're going to host the national championship game. I think it's called the Mercedes-Benz Dome. Now, contrast Atlanta and San Diego. Why is San Diego going to LA to play in a 30,000-seat stadium? Atlanta is building a $1.5+ billion stadium right in the parking lot to where they are now. Look at the contrast and the mindset from the owners with Arthur Blank and then also the guys out here that own the San Diego Chargers. Look at just give me about a minute or two in the mindset. Why does Arthur Blank see the benefit of keeping his team where the city supported them forever, but out here Spanos just want to take them to a smaller outhouse? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, not only that, you look at this, the Georgia Dome, I believe, as you said, 96, I think it was actually open around 92.
Okay.
But, this is an arena that hosts Super Bowls just like San Diego. And we're not talking about an antiquated stadium, Charlton. We're talking about a modern facility, a dome stadium. That, has been around and hosted college championships, NFL Super Bowls, but, they see the need as far as the corporate understanding. You build a new facility, you add more luxury suites, Charlton, but you build it for the fans, Charlton, to make everybody more comfortable.
Yeah.
When we think about Qualcomm Stadium there in San Diego, Charlton, how long it's been around, and that's where the Chargers moved to from the Los Angeles area when they originally were down in Los Angeles when they opened up
in 61.
A franchise.
Yeah.
But, they've gone down there, they've asked over and over, and we've seen this in California, Charlton. What was the last football stadium that was built in California? That's Levi Stadium.
Yeah.
Levi Stadium was the first stadium built in California, Charlton, to play football, and strictly football, just Qualcomm. And not Qualcomm wasn't even a strictly football stadium. It was a Universal Stadium because the Padres played there.
Yeah.
And even in Oakland, the A's play there. But a strict football stadium, you got to look at Levi Stadium was the first stadium built in California in many years.
Yeah.
Because all those other arenas, the Rose Bowl, they played football in there. The Coliseum, they play football and baseball in both of those arenas.
Yeah.
So, this is something that California hasn't looked at as far as keeping franchise. And you talked about it, the entertainment factor of California, that you have so many things around in California, Charlton, that, people find it hard. And think about it. You got 22 million people in Southern California.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of wealth in that city, Charlton, when you think about the finances of some of the people there.
Yeah.
But how many times do they want to attend games, Charlton?
Yeah.
When you look at the overwhelmingness of going to sports in Los Angeles, you damn near spend every day at a game. If you took the 4 major sports that are in Los Angeles, Charlton, hockey, basketball, baseball, actually 5. You got football, pro football, and college football. How many times can you attend an event?
Yeah, that's true.
Keep a family together.
That's true. And
Just look at, don't worry about the 22 million.
Yeah.
How many times do the people that can afford the real seats go to a game? And think about those who can't. Those people, we always talk about the people who have, Chuck. But we forget about those marginal incomes of people between $35,000 and $50,000 a year who are struggling to make it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go down to 25.
Yeah.
Because when you have a dual household income and you're only making $50,000 to $60,000 as a family, that's not a lot of money at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's.
And then you're asking these people, okay, and I got 3 kids.
Yeah.
So you're asking, which kid do you leave behind? Which 2 kids do you leave behind? And the wife.
Yeah.
So that you can take one of them to a game.
Well,
that's what you're looking at now.
Well, Big C, I think that's a very good point, and that the Spanos family started out selling sandwiches to migrant workers up in the San Joaquin Valley, and now they're billionaires, and they've just totally turned their back on the guy that worked so hard just to just to try to put food on the table, Big C. But we always want to say safe travels, Big C. Appreciate you so much running through airports and doing the Charlton and Big C Sports Show. I appreciate you very much. And as we always say, every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide, follow Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network, the #1 network in the United States. And as we always say, there's never any room for domestic violence. No woman should ever have to go through that garbage on her own. If you see someone in trouble, just call 911. And as we always tell you, every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide, follow Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. And as we always tell you, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.